Welcome to Christian Virtual Fellowship. Christian Virtual Fellowship is the online church of allegiance to the King. If you don't have a church home and are a Biblical Unitarian, believing in the one true God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, we invite you to check us out at a2kchurch.org and join us for fellowship and friendship. Today, we're going to review the scriptures about a fascinating and unique incident of Jacob wrestling with God and becoming transformed in the process. First, I'd like to talk to you about the covenantal promise of God, which was given to Abraham and repeated to Isaac and then Jacob. Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand which is on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. The record of Jacob is a fascinating study of human pride being brought to righteous humility before our redeeming God. The record shows God was very interested in working with one family to bless not just that family, but all the nations of the world. Often God spoke of himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that he would associate his holy self with Jacob, whose name means the one who trips up another, as a story of forgiveness, grace, and mercy. I hope the story will inspire you to think of God our Father as someone who is personally and vitally interested in you. And I'll start in Genesis chapter 32. And this is for those of you who are not familiar with the wrestling with God scripture. So let's quickly review it. Then we'll get into the background leading up to this event, and finally discuss its meaning and relevance. So I'll go to Genesis 32, verse 24. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men, and have prevailed." And Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." Now the sun rose up upon him just as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. Okay, now that's the reading of the bare bones incident. But as you can imagine, there is a lot leading up to this amazing story and significant consequences afterwards. So let's get into it. The story begins before Jacob was even born. So Isaac, Jacob's father, was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as a wife, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children. And the Lord answered him, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children struggled together within her. And she said, "If it is so, why am I in this condition?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples will be separated from your body. and one people will be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. The story of Jacob really starts before he was born. So these two nations we're going to go over what God told Rebekah. Two nations are in your womb. The twins represent not just two individuals, but two future nations, Edom from Esau and Israel from Jacob. Two peoples will be separated. They will be distinct in character, destination, and covenant relationship. One people will be stronger than the other. Throughout history, Israel often prevailed over Edom politically and spiritually. The older will serve the younger. This reverses normal primogeniture. Esau the elder would ultimately be subordinate to Jacob the younger. When her days leading to the delivery were at an end, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came out red, all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. Afterwards, his brother came out with his hand holding on to Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the field. But Jacob was a civilized man, living in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So Esau means red in color. We aren't told about Jacob's newborn appearance, except that he was holding onto Esau's foot as he came out the birth canal. Jacob means supplanter. A supplanter is someone who trips up someone else. He's the guy who would see someone walking by and stick his foot out to trip the passerby, making him fall down. So Jacob is not a name of honor. Yet Jacob is the younger, and God's prophetic declaration to Rebekah stated that the older would serve the younger. Despite the prophecy, the parents are split as to which son to favor. But Esau, as the older, had the right of the firstborn. That meant he gets a double portion of the inheritance and becomes the spiritual leader of the family. Being the spiritual leader means he would be in the Messiah genealogy. God's promise to Abraham and Isaac that their seed or descendant would bless all the nations of the world, plus the older would serve the younger, which was told to Rebekah, indicate who should be the family's spiritual leader. Well, that's Jacob. So now I'm going to go through a summary of some of the scripture just to save some time here. So Esau returns from hunting one day, and he is absolutely famished. Instead of just feeding his brother as you would normally do, a family member, Jacob demands payment for a bowl of stew. Esau sells his birthright to Jacob for that bowl of stew. That is just how much Esau valued one day becoming the spiritual leader of his family, as well as a double portion of the inheritance. And you may recall that the inheritance includes God's covenantal promise and blessing on Abraham and Isaac, not just a bunch of animals and tents. So by basically extorting the birthright from Esau, it became Jacob's. Later, Jacob deceives his blind father into giving him the blessing Isaac intended for his firstborn Esau. Jacob lies to his father, telling him he was Esau in order to steal the blessing Isaac wanted to give his favorite son. So what is the big deal with a blessing from the father? Why is that so important? Let's take a look at what some authorities say. When patriarchs like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob blessed their children, they were transmitting covenantal promises given by God, especially concerning lineage, land, and leadership. Isaac's blessing to Jacob included material abundance, as stated, "Now may God give you the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and an abundance of grain and new wine." That was part of the blessing of Isaac to Jacob. It also includes authority and dominion. May peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. That also was included in Jacob's blessing. And then lastly, a covenantal favor. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. Such words echoed the Abrahamic covenant, showing that Isaac was transferring that divine promise to Jacob. The blessing is irrevocable. Once spoken, a biblical blessing could not simply be retracted, even if given in error, as in Isaac's case when deceived by Jacob. This reflects the belief that a true blessing, once uttered under divine providence, takes effect, binding both heaven and earth to its fulfillment. And then Romans 11:29 states that the gifts and callings of God are irrevocable. The blessing indicates destiny and prophecy. In patriarchal narratives, blessings are prophetic utterances foretelling the future of individuals or tribes. Isaac's blessing shaped the destiny of Jacob's descendants, Israel, and contrasted sharply with Esau's, which is Edom. There's spiritual continuity in the blessing. Ultimately, biblical blessing implies a continuation of divine purpose through chosen lines. The blessing of Isaac to Jacob ensured the perpetuation of God's covenant promise leading to the Messiah. So God had told Rebekah that the older would serve the younger, that Esau would be subordinate to Jacob. It wasn't that Esau was so bad. It was God's decision, his choice, to have Jacob be part of the Christ lineage. Jacob acquires a magnificent blessing that is partially fulfilled of what God told Rebekah, the older shall serve the younger. So what happened next? And then we'll have a brief summary of Genesis 27:30 to 28:5. The right of the firstborn being extorted by Jacob, and also having stolen his blessing, enrages Esau, who says he will kill Jacob as soon as Isaac dies. So Esau is white hot angry about Jacob stealing the blessing and also getting the birthright. The mother, Rebekah, tells Isaac that she cannot stand Esau's Canaanite wives. So Isaac allows Jacob to leave and escape Esau's murderous fury under the pretext of looking for a wife. Jacob is sent to Mesopotamia, where his mother came from, and where her brother lives and has 2 daughters. On his way, he falls asleep, and he had a dream, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth with its top reaching to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Then behold, the Lord was standing above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will also be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Wow, what great promises God had given Jacob in this dream. God promises to Jacob what he had promised to Abraham and Isaac. God promises to be with Jacob and protect him and to bring him back to Canaan. God demonstrates his faithfulness to his covenant with Abraham and Isaac. But how he does so is his choice, and he chose Jacob, not Esau. So, how does Jacob respond to being chosen by God and his plan of redemption? Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, "The Lord is certainly in this place, and I did not know it." And he was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." So Jacob got up early in the morning and took the stone that he had placed as a support for his head and set it up as a memorial stone and poured oil on its top. Jacob also made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take and give me food to eat and garments to wear, and I return to my father's house in safety, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone, which I have set up as a memorial stone, will be God's house. And of everything that you give me, I will assuredly give you a tenth of it, a tenth to you." Well, my impression is that Jacob's response is mixed. He acknowledges the Lord Yahweh and the promises. He respectfully sets up a memorial. But how does he relate to God? If God does this and that for me, then I will choose him to be my God, and I will pay him a part of what I have. I don't see any loving loyalty here, just kind of transactional. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Not a full-on complete commitment by Jacob. At least that's my interpretation. He wants God to return him to safety, and that's understandable since Esau wants to kill him. So Jacob goes to Haran, which is in Mesopotamia, to the north, where his uncle Laban lives. He works for Laban for 20 years. There's no record of his visiting his blind elderly father and his mother back in Canaan during that 20 years. He becomes wealthy, and both Laban and Laban's sons grow envious and hostile towards him because they think his wealth is at Laban's expense. So there's no real future there for him. God tells him to return to Canaan. In the dead of night, Jacob and his wives, children, servants, and herds of animals secretly leave, not telling Laban goodbye. It takes 3 days for Laban to realize his daughter's grandchildren had left. Laban forms a posse to overtake the traveling family. Laban intends to take his people back from Jacob and maybe kill him. But God intervenes, telling Laban not to condemn Jacob and do him no harm. So Laban makes peace with Jacob, who resumes his journey to his homeland, where he fears he will face a new and more sinister threat, Esau. And as the slide shows, the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." And that would certainly indicate his protection, wouldn't it? Now, as Jacob went his way, the angels of God met him. And when he saw them, Jacob said, "This is God's camp." So he named that place Mahanaim. Then Jacob sent messengers ahead of himself to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He commanded them, his messengers, saying, "This is what you shall say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says the following: I have resided with Laban and stayed until now, and I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I have sent messengers to tell my lord, so that I may find favor in your sight." And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and furthermore, he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people who were with him, and the flocks, the herds, and the camels, into two companies. For he said, "If Esau comes to the one company and attacks it, then the company which is left will escape." I'd like to point out how the first verse is written. The angels met him, not he met them. The word in Hebrew means a chance encounter. It's like if you went to a grocery store and you met a coworker there, someone you were not expecting at the store. It's like a chance encounter. Jacob sends. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, in a sense, Jacob is kind of mentioned in a passive way. He went his way, and the angels of God met him. So going on, Jacob sends messengers. It's about 70 miles away to inform Esau he was returning. The messengers return, saying he's coming with 400 men. Jacob becomes greatly afraid, yet there's no turning back. He continues on, for God had told him to return to the land of his fathers. Jacob plotted to minimize his risk if Esau was hostile. He divided his herds and servants into two companies. And you notice how he uses words like "tell my Lord" and my and your servant, referring to himself, is humbling himself to his older brother by way of his messengers. So was he forgetting the promise that God would protect him wherever he went? Then Jacob said, "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, Lord, you said to me, return to your country and to your relatives, and I will make you prosperous. I am unworthy of all the favor and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two companies. Save me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will come and attack me and the mothers with the children. For you said, I will assuredly make you prosper, and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be counted." So he spent the night there. Then he selected from what he had with him a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. Then he placed them in the care of his servants, every flock by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on ahead of me and put a space between flocks." And he commanded the one in front, saying, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong? And where are you going? And to whom do these animals in front of you belong?' Then you shall say, 'These belong to your servant Jacob. It is a gift sent to my lord Esau. And behold, he also is behind us.'" Then he commanded also the second and the third and all those who followed the flock, saying, "In this way you shall speak to Esau when you find him, and you shall say, 'Behold, your servant Jacob also is behind us.' For he said, 'I will appease him with a gift that goes ahead of me. Then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will accept me.' So the gift passed on ahead of him, while he himself spent that night in the camp. Now he got up that same night and took his two wives, his two female slaves, and his 11 children, and crossed the shallow place of the Jabbok, which is a river. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. So again, Jacob is minimizing his risk by first having two companies, one after the other, so if one is attacked, the other can escape. Then he comes up with a second plan, and that is to appease his brother with some 550 livestock as gifts to soften his heart. Jacob, is he trusting God to protect him? He seems to be relying on his resources to manipulate his brother's feelings. He pulls out all the stops, even praying for God to save him. Finally, he leads his family on the other side of the stream so that he stands between his wives and children and the likely route of Esau. So he puts himself in between excuse me. He puts himself in between what he considers to be a possible threat and his family. And so it was on a hill near the Jabbok River, which runs kind of east and west towards the River Jordan. Then Jacob was left alone, and here we come to the wrestling. Jacob was left alone. Let's read it again, just so that we, as we had before, and then we'll take a look at it more closely. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Then he said, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men and have prevailed." And Jacob asked him and said, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. So now let's take a closer look at what we just read. Then Jacob was left alone. That's in the first verse we read. At first, Jacob is alone. We don't know for how long, maybe hours. For an excellent lesson on the value of silence and solitude, I suggest you check out Laura Willenberg's Practicing Silence and Solitude in a Noisy World, a teaching of October 19, 2025. I'll put a link to that teaching below. What did Jacob do after sending his people off? Why did he stay behind? He had prayed before, "Save me, please, from the hand of my brother Esau, the man whom I had taken his birthright for a bowl of stew, the man I stole his blessing from the father who preferred him, the man who wanted to kill me. No wonder I was named Jacob, the one who trips people up." Now, is it fair to say that maybe Jacob was finally in solitude and had some silence to reflect and repent from all that he had done, and ask God for forgiveness? That's a question. For Jacob, his prayer will be answered in the most unexpected way. And a man wrestled with him until daybreak. From the dark, a man suddenly appears without explanation. The text says, "A man wrestled with him." Note that the text does not say Jacob wrestled with him, but that the man wrestled with Jacob. So again, kind of in a passive sense, and like this is not a fight that Jacob was looking for. It's one that's foisted upon him. So that leads me to believe that it's the stranger who started the fight. So what was the fight for? I mean, all his goods and wealth and family had already left. He was just there by himself. Why did the man merely wrestle with him? It's not a knife fight or a sword fight. It's not an effective way to kill anybody. In any case, Jacob doesn't just throw up his arms and gives up. He struggles with the man all night long. And that shows his determination. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, Genesis 32:25, the man who suddenly appeared, he saw he had not prevailed against him. Jacob is the one winning. He is the one prevailing. You know, this attack is not about killing Jacob. It's more personal than that. It's hands on the other person. It's not meant to kill, but to confront. It goes on for hours. Jacob doesn't give up, run away, or disengage. The man sees that he's not winning against Jacob. Now, what I give as a offering is a picture of two wrestlers, and you can see the position that the wrestler on top has a hammer lock on the man below him. He's got the man pinned down. He can control him. And it's considered a basic foundational move, but it's also one that's very important for experienced wrestlers. And you might notice that the man that is winning, his legs are apart. So in that sense, he's kind of vulnerable, but he's got the other guy literally by the head. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. So the hip was dislocated. Well, what kind of force is needed to make a hip dislocate? I'll tell you, it's high energy trauma. The most common cause is a significant force, often from a car crash or a fall, that violently forces the hip joint out of its socket. Such physical force may have proven to Jacob this man was not a mere man, but from God. Well, just a touch would dislodge his hip. What does Jacob feel like even as he is winning? Severe pain, inability to move the injured leg, visible deformity. The leg may look shorter or be in an unnatural position, numbness and tingling in the leg or foot. But you know something? Jacob doesn't quit. But now he wants something from this man or whoever he is, even as this man wants to stop the struggle. And he says, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But he, Jacob, says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So the sun is starting to dawn, and after giving to Jacob a painful, lifelong injury, now the man wants to stop wrestling? "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." Apparently, Jacob has him in a wrestler's lock. Jacob's hip pain is excruciating, but he holds on to the man. During this struggle, Jacob has realized that this is a spiritual encounter. Is this the answer of the Lord God to his earlier prayer to save him? Jacob says to the man, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Why did Jacob think that there was a blessing to be had from this man unless he was from God? The last time Jacob wanted a blessing was from his father Isaac. He used deception and lies against the blind man to rip off his brother, stealing the blessing. Now he wants a blessing from this man who has started the wrestling and had severely injured him. but this time there is honesty. So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." When his father Isaac had asked him who he was, he said Esau. He lied. Now he admits to being Jacob, the one who tripped up his father and brother so that they failed to pass on the blessing as they wanted. He was being honest. Yes, I am Jacob. In a sense, a confession of guilt, of fault. So verse 28, then he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have contended with God and with men and have prevailed. Hosea, in his book, later writes, in his mature strength he contended with God. Yes, he wrestled with the angel and prevailed. Like Abraham, Jacob is given a new name, a name with meaning, Israel, contending, wrestling, struggling with God. On this hillside, it's hand-to-hand contact with God's angel, seeking a blessing. Jacob is transformed into Israel, a new identity, a new relationship with God. His past he can put behind. By fighting with the angel, he struggled with God. God's undeserved grace abounded towards Jacob. He wasn't going to kill Jacob for seeing his angel. He wanted Jacob's attention, his cooperation and loyalty. He wanted Jacob to trust him and to be conscious of his power to enable and deliver. And Jacob asked him and said, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And so he blessed him there, and he blessed them there. The man would not give him his name because to do so would detract from this encounter and struggle with God. Instead, the man who is an angel, a representative of God, blesses Jacob there. That was the purpose of this encounter, for God to transform Jacob. Jacob now understood that and says, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. That was God's mercy. 20 years before, while on his way to his uncle Laban, he had a dream of a ladder to heaven and God giving him encouragement. But before falling asleep, the sun was going down. Now, after being honest with God and himself and being blessed, the sun was coming up. With God, new possibilities arose. And he was limping, no doubt painfully, a constant reminder of his new identity, Israel, wrestler with God. Then Jacob raised his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two slave women. He put the slave women and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So see the deliverance of Jacob from what he had so greatly feared. He humbled himself to his brother repeatedly, bowing down 7 times. No doubt that must have really hurt, having a bad hip. Instead of Esau attacking him, Esau runs to him and embraces and kisses him, and they weep together. That is a reconciliation that only God could bring. Esau then notices all the women and children. He asks, who are these? And they approach and bow to him. And Esau said, what do you mean by all this company which I have met? And he said, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Jacob said, No, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, then accept my gift from my hand. For I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please accept my gift which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. So he urged him, and he accepted it. Then Esau said, Let's journey on and go, and I will go ahead of you. In this passage, Jacob said to Esau, I see your face as one sees the face of God. In other words, seeing your face is like seeing God's face, because through you, I see the mercy and favor of God. Jacob saw in Esau's forgiving face the very grace of God that had earlier spared his own life. He recognized divine mercy in Esau's forgiveness. He saw God's presence in this act of reconciliation. He honored Esau's graciousness as God-like, a reflection of the mercy Jacob had just experienced from God himself during the struggle with the angel. Our reading ends by the two brothers going their own way. Esau returns home to Edom. Jacob goes west to Canaan. The next recorded time they meet is to bury their father Isaac years later, and then they peacefully go their separate ways. So what lessons can we learn from this remarkable incident? First, we could look at the context about facing uncertainty and fear. Before meeting Esau, Jacob is filled with anxiety and apprehension. He fears Esau's response, recalling their troubled history. This context sets the stage for Jacob's wrestling, symbolizing the inner turmoil many experience when facing unresolved conflicts or uncertain futures. So lesson one might be confronting one's past. Jacob's struggle represents the necessity of confronting past wrongs and unresolved issues. Instead of fleeing, Jacob stays the night alone, reflecting and wrestling with both his fears and his conscience. The lesson here is that growth often requires us to face our history directly, seeking closure and healing. Lesson number two is perseverance in the struggle. Jacob doesn't give up during his wrestling match, even when injured. His determination to hold on until you bless me teaches the value of persistence in times of spiritual or personal crisis. True transformation often comes after enduring and wrestling through challenges rather than avoiding them. Lesson number three. The power of vulnerability and dependence on God. Jacob emerges from the struggle with a limp, a physical reminder of his vulnerability and dependence on God. This teaches that admitting our weaknesses is not a defeat, but a step toward spiritual maturity. Jacob's encounter demonstrates that blessings and breakthroughs often come when we surrender our self-sufficiency and trust in God's strength. Lesson 4, Identity Transformation. During the encounter, Jacob's name is changed to Israel, meaning he struggles with God. This name change signifies a transformation of identity from a deceiver to one who has struggled and prevailed with divine help. The lesson is that life's defining moments can reshape our self-understanding and purpose. And finally, lesson number 5, preparation for reconciliation. The wrestling prepares Jacob for his meeting with Esau. Having faced God and received a new identity, Jacob approaches his brother with humility and readiness for reconciliation. The story teaches that spiritual wrestling and personal transformation equip us to seek forgiveness and restore broken relationships. So to conclude, the encounter of Jacob wrestling with God while waiting to see Esau provides timeless lessons. Face your past, persist through trials, embrace vulnerability, allow God to transform, allow God to transform your identity and prepare your heart for reconciliation. These insights encourage readers to trust that through struggle and surrender, true blessing and restoration are possible. So may the face of God's goodness shine upon you. If this teaching has blessed you and you are watching it on YouTube, please punch the like button and subscribe to our channel. Now we are going to our group discussion about this teaching, and it will be recorded on a different video. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. Don't hesitate to comment, and if you'd like to participate in our worship services, you can find us at a2kchurch.org. God bless.